have Nancy Mead, the director here at the Capon Bridge Public Library. And we have Mike Robinson with us tonight, and he's going to do a virtual book signing of his 2 new books. And these will be for the Capon Bridge Library. And we also have these for sale. He's selling both of them as a set for $20, $12.50 each if you already have book 1. Mike, Winchester Tales 2 just came out a few weeks ago.
Correct. Yeah. It started about January that I wrote, and I just had a story that I always thought was very interesting. Was thinking about how I was going to present that story on Facebook. So there was a site on Facebook called If You've Lived in Winchester. So I posted the site. It was actually the death of Daniel Morgan. And Daniel Morgan had died in his daughter's house on Amherst Street in Winchester. And I just thought I just wrote it from a kind of a point of view of him in the bedroom, his last days. This strong, strapping man that this general then withered away to this man looking over Amherst Street. I wrote the story, and I was sent probably dozens of messages. You need to write something else. That was so interesting, and I was talking to my fiancée Amanda, and she said, "Start your own page." I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know how to do it. So I Googled it. How do you start a page? What do you do? Figured it out. Started the page in January. By March, we had 5,000 followers.
Wow.
We're up to about 7,500 almost now. I just felt that, not to take away from the historians of Winchester, there were great ones over the years. Last 200 years, there's people who chronicled the history that were great. And there still are great ones, but I just said, you got to keep your finger on the pulse of how people are thinking these days, how social media is done. People like short, sweet, boom, in and out stories where you just hit them with a punch and then on to the next one. And that seemed to resonate. People just, you're on your phone, you go to Facebook, you catch a story, whether you're sitting in a DMV chair or a doctor's office or something. These stories were just short and sweet. And they were about normal people and normal lives in Winchester. Not to take away from our Stonewall Jacksons, our George Washingtons, and our Civil War. I just felt that the people were the most important thing about Winchester. The houses that we pass every day, that may be your doctor's office now.
Right.
So I started doing that, and probably I'm up to like 350 stories.
Awesome.
With the 3rd book almost done. With a 3.5-year-old and an 8-year-old, it's quite tough.
So when do you think? When will that one
Well,
finish?
I don't want to rush that one. I don't think I'm going to do it before Christmas. I mentioned that I was going to try to get it out before Christmas. I just think it's too much. So I think I'm going to make this a spring launch. Now, with something like this, I didn't know how to write it. I was just like, I have the stories, I can do that. What do I need to do? So I called around, and Winchester Printers was so nice and kind and understanding and patient. They gave me the template and said, if you're going to self-publish, just here you go.
Wow.
Because they only print. They don't do any editing. They say, whatever you give us is what we're going to print. So it needs to be right. So I was like, oh no, the pressure was on. So I poured over these countless hours to make sure it was right. But Solenberger's Hardware in Winchester, when I started thinking about how I was going to pay for this, one thing is coming up with it, and then coming up with the money to print this thing was another thing. I thought about who is the oldest, business in town, and with a great reputation. So I took a picture of Solenberger's Hardware. I did a mock-up page where it was a picture of their building from 1888, and I put above it, I said, published through the courtesy of Solenberger's Hardware, Winchester institution since 1888. I pitched it to John and Patty Solenberger, they love history. If you ever go into Solenberger's in their hallway, it's just
I've seen
It's
those.
like the wall of Solenberger fame.
Yes.
You know, they have such a deep, vast history in Winchester. Very kind, very supportive. They whenever, it's like they're with me on this journey. They call me, we sold 20 books today. You know, so they're the best. So that's really kind of how it all kind of came down. And I'm still feeding stories as they come along. And it's very organic. I mean, some days I'll have 2 or 3 that have just come to me. Some days I'll have that writing block that everybody has, and I just don't really have that angle or hook yet. But that's really what it was all about. All I needed was just a little kernel of a story, just a little bit of something to nudge me in the right direction. Then I would go deep into trying to find the material to back it up. And that's one thing, I didn't want this to become Winchester Tall Tales, or, you know, I love ghost stories more than anybody, and I always get that say, oh, we gotta do the ghost story on the Wayside Inn. I'm like, well, I'm trying to stay in the land of the living. Well, everybody in the book is pretty much dead. I guess they are ghosts. But I wanted to keep it factual, you know, so I poured over a lot of books to make sure that the stories that are in these books are factual. Now, the Winchester Tales 1 book is a self-guided tour of 32 sites. It starts at the museum in the Shenandoah Valley, goes up, meanders through Winchester, through Mount Hebron Cemetery, comes back and ends at the museum. Now, I'm not tied in with any organized, with Winchester. Not that I don't want to. I just know that they had, with COVID, it was kind of tough. They weren't doing a lot at the time. I wanted to get the books out, and they've been very gracious. They'll carry the books at some point in Winchester. But I just kind of did this as an independent project.
That's great. Now, people have asked me, is there any information on West Virginia, and Capon Bridge especially?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about our area is, you know, prior to, early 1700s, we were all part of Orange County, one huge gigantic county that had Frederick and Warren and Clark and Hampshire, and might have been Hardy and Morgan at that time too, which was nice for me, because even though I was trying to pick stories and they would have been very early stories, I kind of cheated a little bit and said, yeah, they were part of this at one time, so I included some. There's a story of the Battle of the Trough in there, and there's Cawdy's Castle in there. I've got one I'm working on, Bloomery. I just always felt when I drove through Bloomery, there's something there. I just love that little community and the Bloomery Furnace. I'm going to figure something out there. But yes, another one was the records of Hampshire County were kept during the Civil War. They try to keep them safe. But the Union soldiers were coming in and they were burning stuff, and so they brought all the Hampshire County records to Winchester. They held them there for a time, and Winchester was in danger, and they took the Hampshire County records and took them to Luray Caverns, hid them in a cavern there. They don't know if it was in actual Luray Caverns, but they hid them in a cave there. A battle ensued. They moved around everywhere. So Hampshire County records are a little spotty. I know they lost a lot of their wills and marriage information prior to the Civil War due to just being burned and lost and transported around. But those are the type of stories that I love and I'll write about. If something comes up in West Virginia, I love it. There's one I just did on an African American woman who disguised herself as a man out of Winchester and joined in Clarksburg and spent 2 years fighting. They finally caught up with her and they kicked her out.
I read your story on that.
Yeah, and which just blows my mind because she deserves something.
Correct.
Even if it's added, I'm trying to get her name added to a list, and I've been in contact with the West Virginia Historical Society. It's hard because that list was made right after the Civil War. So all those names, and it's sad because there's like 400 names on there, and 350 of those medals are unclaimed. Slave records were non-existent. So if somebody had escaped, like she did out of Winchester, and changed her name, there would be no record of who she was or any family. So it's kind of hard. I know that nobody's going to come and claim that medal on her behalf, but having her name added to that list,
Yes.
to me, she deserves that.
Yes.
You know, so those are the kind of type of things that I like and enjoy.
Okay. Well, that's what I wanted to let everyone know, and these will make wonderful Christmas gifts.
Absolutely.
So.
But it's, you know, another thing about this is that I went and when I first started this, I said, you know, if you're going to come up with these, some of these were my mom's stories that she told me.
Okay.
So, and she had passed, and I said, you know what, I love these stories, Mom, but I've got to make sure that these are not Mary Robinson tall tales, or these are the real deal. So I went to the Hanley Library's website, and this is what was so important to me as a historian, an amateur historian, is that libraries like this, you know, not only walking through the door, and during these times, you know, sometimes you can walk through doors and sometimes you can't, but now the doors are open and I can go in there and pull a book by William Greenway Russell or Cartmill or Kercheval or any of the guys, Garland Quarles, the guys who wrote these things down for me to pick up that torch. I call them, you know, the libraries are the seeds that grow into these type of stories. You know, whether you're a kid, you know, coming in and doing research on dinosaurs or something, and you grew up to be a paleontologist, you know, it has to start somewhere. And it's places like this, Capon Bridge Library, it's like the Hanley Library. It's all there on the shelves, you know. So I'm nothing, this book is nothing without the books that the people who recorded these stories before I did. I interpreted them, I wrote them in my style. I give them the credit that they deserve, but there would be no stories without that. So that's why I've always felt, and this is why I tell my daughter every day, I said, if you want to know something and know more about it, use the internet. Go on that library's website, pull it. The genealogies I pulled from the libraries, you know, I can only go so far with the books that are there for me, but the work that they do at the archives, and you know, they trace it back 2 or 3. If I have a broken chain of a story, so many times I've gone to the library and they've built that chain, and now I can go and jump off and say, they lived on Braddock Street, you know. So it's so important that it's here. We got to use it, you know, and that's the most important thing.
Okay, well, we thank you for that. We thank
Sure.
you for being here today. And he's going to sign his books for the library. So they will be cataloged here if anyone wants to check them out. But also, like I say, they are for sale. And I believe you're placing a new order because you've almost sold out. Is that correct?
We ordered 1,000 of each book. We're down to 140.
I have plenty here.
And I will come and sign your book for you. If you come to the library and you buy a book and you leave it here, I come through this way quite often. I will sign a book to you anytime. So just let me know. Perfect Christmas presents too.
Yeah.
And I will be ordering another, hopefully by the end of the week we'll be out of books completely. Winchester Printer said they can get me another 1,000 of each in about 2 to 2.5 weeks.
Oh.
So just in time.
Yeah.
So if you have that present for that person at work, you got that $20 Secret Santa, you're like, I don't know what to get this person. This is the perfect present. You know, or that relative, you're like, I don't really see you that often. Yeah, you get you know, this is perfect for that. But thank you very much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Very, very much.
Thanks
Any
for joining
words-
us.
Any words of wisdom for the Hampshire County voters with the library levy coming up?
Well, I just think it's a travesty if you don't have a local library at your disposal, because the people that will suffer are your children. You know, we as adults, we are very fortunate. You know, we go through our libraries. I was very fortunate to have something like Hanley. You know, John Hanley left Winchester with an incredible gift. But we're all not so fortunate to have a John Hanley. So it's up to us, the citizens, to keep these libraries alive, because it does come down to the children. They've got to have a place to come. They've got to have a place for that seed to sprout and to grow. If you're going to have your doctors and your lawyers and your paleontologists one day, it's got to start somewhere, and it starts in places like this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.